Michael's been in the industry a long time. He started where you need to start. He started as an engineer at Northeastern University, about 25 miles from where I grew up. So he's an engineer by background. He's worked on boats, he's driven boats, so he understands how the yachts work, which is very important in our industry. I really respect you for that, Michael. About 20 years ago, he decided to go on land. He's worked for legendary names in South Florida in the industry, Bob Saxon, Associate, Fraser, Merrill Stevens, and now, Nick, you're really very fortunate to have Michael leading your ship here in the U.S. So Michael's now going to be the moderator for our panel, which we've dubbed really getting a pulse of the industry. And we've got, 5 different people that are going to do that for us, and I'll let Michael introduce them for you and take us through our first panel session. Michael?
Thanks, John. As the guys come up, the technical difficulty, well, I got to back up a little bit. Most of the people in the room are fairly familiar faces, but, and many of you know my son Matthew is a near-drowning survivor, and he has cerebral palsy, but he's in a wheelchair, and very often therapists and stuff say, we've got this thing that's unbreakable, that for sure, whether it's a key guard so he can communicate or something with his wheelchair, and we're like, okay, if you say so, and Matthew uses it, for sure it breaks. So for me today, I took Matthew's place. Our computer, the technology we're using, for some reason, with Robbie here, we just can't get my computer to project on the screen. That's the simplest problem. What we hope to use is a technology that is pretty much used in common places like American Idol, where the audience polls right away, and that's what we hope to use in introductions. So Ron Cleveringa is, so we would have a slide with Ron and Burger Boat Company up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and give us a little, yeah, guys, you need to turn on your mics and give a little bit of a bio. And again, what we're trying to do here is bring a panel of folks together that we'll see what's going on here with that. A panel of folks together that can give you insights from how their businesses have evolved and what's going on, and then kind of look at a broader picture going from that $30 billion industry to what it is in the United States to what it means to individual companies. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Ron Cleveringa. I've been in the industry since 1984. Started as a naval architect with Broward Marine. Worked with Lloyd Ships for a while in Australia and have been with Burger since 2000. Moved into my current position in 2000 as Vice President of Sales and Marketing.
Okay, so with that, can you give us, well actually why don't we go on with introductions and then we'll come back to the insights of the businesses. So Ward Eshelman from Ward's Marine Electric is, how many generations of family now in your business?
We're on our 3rd generation.
All right.
So
give us the background.
I'll be glad to. My name is Ward Eshelman, and we were speaking earlier about, a lot of people think my last name is Ward, and I've had people come to me and say, is your name Ward? Ward. No, it's not, but you can see why it was not. My dad did not start Eshelman Marine Electric because it's a difficult word for a lot of people. The company was started in 1950 by Ward Eshelman Sr. As a small marine electrical service company. I went to work there after I graduated from college in 1972, somewhere thereabouts. So I've been there for a long time and been doing this for quite a while. And as I said earlier, they're our 3rd generation. My son and daughter are going to be taking the company over one day, but not yet. I'm not ready to go. I'm of retirement age, but I'm not going there right now. There's still a lot of stuff I want to do, and I really enjoy this business. We are a marine electrical engineering, sales, and service company.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, Todd, joining us from San Diego. Even though we've got people coming from other places, Todd Roberts in the Marine Group, Boatworks. Todd, tell us about what's going on out in San Diego.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Roberts. I'm the president of the Marine Group Boatworks. We have 2 locations in San Diego with a maximum capacity of 660 tons via travel lift. We also have a relatively new location in Los Cabos, or Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, with 150 ton. I came into this industry from a very unique perspective. I graduated from Merchant Marine Academy and went to sea as a deck officer and as a captain. And this is my first boatyard job. So one of our concepts we have at the Marine Group is we look at everything from the customer side of the equation. And most of our management share that philosophy and come from a similar background.
Very good. And then our data guru today, Jeremy, flying in all the way from London also. Jeremy Roche from Boat International. Jeremy, tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
So I'm Jeremy Roche. I'm the sales director for Boat International. We have a portfolio of magazines, websites, and events. The US version that everyone should know, hopefully, in this room is Showboats. I'm responsible for all the ad sales, but over the last 5 years, we've accumulated a lot of data, and we use a lot of the data to try and predict where we're going to go with our business. And so I've been at the forefront of accumulating that data, acquiring certain databases, and then moving that data into a usable format.
Jeremy, what do you call the thing that gets published every day on email that comes out on?
It's a brokerage e-newsletter that just informs people about the state of the market.
How many people get that in the room? Boat International comes out with sales, and yeah, a bunch of people. And then Frank. Frank has expert marine?
Yachting experts.
Yachting experts, sorry, Frank. Yachting experts, and Frank and I have been in a panel where actually Pull Everywhere worked successfully once, but Frank's down in Miami, and again, your perspective. Also, you're an FYBA member, or board member, the Florida Yacht Brokers Association, so you're going to give us a perspective from both, but tell us about Yachting Experts.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for the USSA to put this event together, and for Jim Perry for putting me in the spot. I'll get you back. We're a boutique outfit based out of Miami that was actually established in 2009 in the midst of a recession, as you know, we all went through, and most of us are still here. So basically, at that point, and I'll tell you later how this all came about, and probably the reason why we're still here today, we catered to the Latin American market, and back then, the sales were probably about 90% export to that market. Today, we're about balanced at 50-50. And I don't want to bore you with that numbers, but in any event, thanks to that is why we survived and why I want to share that with you, because I think you all can benefit from that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll take a look at some of the big numbers, kind of the overarching look of what the industry has, some of the stuff that John's already shared, and then go on with kind of how it relates to these guys up here and how that might relate to you. So we'll just forget about the poll everywhere. We'll just go on with the slides. So I think, again, the place we come from is the big market picture of that the business is a $30 billion business. Hard number to get your head around in the United States. That comes down to being a $6 billion business. One of the things that was shared with me is that in the United States, in the state of Florida, which is another one of the slides once we get back there, is that we have the yachting industry, and the watershed that it creates has a similar footprint as far as revenue of what the citrus industry does. Citrus industry is a $1.3 billion industry for the state of Florida, and yachting isn't very different. Here we are back in the slides. They'll catch up. Next one, please. Yep. The U.S., it'll be 6, and then Florida's. So with that, yeah, and then let's go to Jeremy. Could you go to the next slide? And Jeremy will tell us what some of these numbers mean and how it relates to us. You know, not just, we stood up and we said the Pledge of Allegiance and stuff, and we are in America, and what John did in the spirit of what's behind this is very much, we're in America. This is the U.S. Superyacht Society, Superyacht Association, but at the same time, we live in a global community, and the global impact of everything going on has a huge effect on our daily lives here. So with that, we kind of go from the global and then bring it down to the U.S. Go ahead.
Okay. overriding message that we had a sales conference in January of this year where we get all our sales team together, 13 people in a room, and we review what we've got to do for the year, and we look at some of these numbers as well so we can go out to the market and preach the messages, basically. And the message that we're trying to preach is very much that things are looking better. So if you don't remember any numbers from right now, just remember, from our side, all the numbers are pointing positively. The key numbers that we follow are new construction, so how many boats are being built, how many are on order, how many orders were there, and the brokerage market. It's fair to say that since 2009, there are an awful lot of boats on the second-hand market. And this has a direct result on the new construction market. When there is an ability to buy a nearly new boat on the second-hand market, available immediately, sometimes at a discounted price, this causes problems for the builders. So for us, tracking this data is very, very important. For the first time since the crisis in late 2008, 2009, we've seen encouraging numbers going forward, both in terms of new construction and on brokerage. If we look at the brokerage numbers first, very specifically, this number is a great one. Unbelievably, only 355 yachts sold above 24 meters. The reality is that the numbers that we're talking about are very, very small. But we track above 24 meters, 355 units sold in 2013. Is that a lot or a little? Well, it's 30% up on the year before. Great number. On the new construction side, we're tracking currently 710 projects across the world, from about 220 odd shipyards across the world. And we have last year, new orders placed last year for new boats, again, always for 24 meters and above. For those, excuse me, I always quote 24 meters because I'm European. For the Americans, obviously, it's 78 feet, so I call it 80 feet. That market there, we saw an increase in the number of orders for boats above 80 feet. Last year, 274 orders, compared to 250 the year before. So the number of orders ticking up as well. In terms of the total number of boats under construction, I mentioned the 710 boats under construction. It's the first year since 2009 that number has actually edged up. Since 2009, that number has been falling consistently. 2008 was, I think, the boom year for most people, and I think we were tracking about 1,000 yachts under construction, just to give you an idea of how much that's come down in that period of time.
So we've gone from 1,000 to 700 and something?
710 currently on the order book, exactly, yeah. And of course, when you've got 710 boats on the order book, we all know, Billy's sitting over there, knows that a lot of the time these boats take a number of years to build. So they won't be launching 710 boats in the next year. Some of those, they'll be 4 or 5 years out, potentially, on the very, very large vessels. In the boom times, they were launching 400 or 500 boats a year. Now we're back down to about 250, 260 boats a year, which is very much what was happening in the early 2000s and in the late 90s. That was the number that was coming out. It was really the boom period in 2003 up to 2008 when there were a lot more shipyards out there as well, producing a lot more product.
All right. Well, with that, and again, the bullet, and then at the very bottom there, the conclusion. So, we're up globally in building boats. The U.S. market, especially that fourth line down, 2013.
Yeah, so let me just explain that slightly. The reason why I quite like the sub 100-foot range is that, generally speaking, because we're dealing with very large vessels, traditionally that's our market that we focus on, 80 foot and above. The sort of 80 to 100 foot, they're an awful lot of product. So if the total fleet of yachts that we track is 9,250 boats, half of those are less than 90 feet. And so the sub 100-foot range is a very important market because there's an awful lot of product there. There was an awful lot on the second-hand market available as well. And there's that, the inability, the trickle-up effect is what a number of the brokers are calling it as well, is the inability to get rid of an existing boat in the 24 to 30-meter range and therefore to go out and buy a bigger boat. The reality is that people are as wealthy, if not wealthier, than they've ever been. Mm-hmm. We look at a number of the wealth reports that are out there, not least the Capgemini report, which is a great one. We also work with BCG, Boston Consultancy Group, who supply us with some fantastic data. The reality is there's more money than there's ever been. But the problem has been, I think a lot of brokers and people will have heard this before, is that when people have an existing boat that they can't sell, they're reluctant to go out and buy a new one. And if people are holding on to smaller boats that they're unable to get rid of, they're unable to go out and buy the 40 or the 50 meter that they're after. So I take great enthusiasm from the fact that the sub 100 meter range was increasing dramatically in 2013.
All right. Very good. So with that, before we go on to the next slide and giving a chance for the rest of the guys on the panel to now kind of relate to the overarching theme of global, U.S., what's going on in the marketplace. Ron, why don't you start by telling us what's going on at Berger Yachts? Sorry, I keep saying that. Berger Boat Company. And what's happening as far as how you have both observed. Oh, this other slide, again, this is from Superyacht Intelligence, but there is showing you sort of the U.S. marketplace. And I know a lot of you guys have only had a glimpse at that, but there's construction, there's suppliers and manufacturers, and a whole bunch of other data there. So how does that relate to how did you guys get through the hard times and what's happening now at Berger Boat Company?
Well, we've been actively pursuing new yacht construction throughout the entire period. Obviously, we've seen a downtick, as everybody has. We looked to our past, looked at what our capabilities were, and even pursued other markets, such as commercial vessels, research vessels, things of that nature. Matter of fact, we secured in 2010 a 60-foot research vessel, aluminum research vessel for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources that ironically replaced their 1937 Berger that they had been using since the early 40s. So we pursued other markets. We continued to invest in both the facilities, the infrastructure. We're putting in a new launch well this summer to increase our capacity, invested in our people, continued to work on our systems, our processes and procedures, and continued to come up with new innovative designs.
Great. Okay. And instead of just going down the panel each time, we'll jump around. Frank, how about you? Again, you kind of started off, and we do have a slide of what's going on with you guys in export, especially in the Latin market. But why don't you give us your picture of the overarching story?
What I wanted to share with you is it's actually a true story, and how everything evolves. In 2006, 2007, I met a client for the first time at the Miami International Boat Show. And he told me, I want to buy a large sport fish. He did buy the largest that the manufacturer made at the time. Because I want to cruise with my family for the next 4 or 5 years. I'm going to retire. And I'm like, wow, that's great. Congratulations. As time went on, we sort of like became friends. And one day he tells me, hey, Frank, you know, you got to get out of here because it's over. And I'm like, what do you mean it's over? The good days are over. And obviously that was before it, at least we saw it in our segment of the market because we were doing pretty good. But then he started sending me emails, and some of those are in the slide, and I started looking at the numbers, and I'm like, well, this is kind of like interesting. And I mean, whether he was right or wrong, I kind of pay attention to him, and I did start traveling back then to Latin America and South America to sort of like make contacts, develop networking like we're doing here now. But I just think that I share this with you today because it's what carried us through for the last 4 years, and it wasn't that bad. I mean, we've been profitable even in a company that started in 2009. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, so hopefully you can all benefit from it as well moving forward.
Can you share with us again, it started off with huge focus on export. What did you say earlier as far as what the market segment change has been for you?
In 2009, I mean, he told me that in 2006, 07. 2009, our sales, 90% of them were export to Latin America.
And what parts of Latin America?
Just, I mean, Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia. Since then, you've seen other pocket markets that we never did business with before. Chile, did like 5 transactions with Chile last year. Before, maybe, 1 a year at best. So there's different pockets that are emerging, and it's still, based on a slide that we couldn't get for you today, and I apologize for that, by 2022, there'll be an increase by 88% of billionaires in Latin America, and 108% of high net worth individuals. And in this study, they consider a high net worth individual someone that has at least $30 million worth of net assets. So again, for the next 8 years, we have the opportunity to capitalize, because in the end, I think it's an underserved market, not only for yacht sales, but for marine products and also services. They don't have the infrastructure to do the work there. I mean, it's very, that's one area of the industry where they're going to have to work on themselves to create the infrastructure to have the ability to cater to this type of vessels. But so you know, most of them actually are buying those vessels. They're keeping them here in the U.S. or they just keep them in the Med. So
How many staff do you have in your
I
company?
mean, including 1099s, about 22.
And how many people speak Spanish?
Probably 17.
Very good.
Well,
Very
and
good.
not only- and Portuguese speaking as well. I think what we did is diversify the sales force. We got people from Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Cuba. So not that we'll be selling a heck of a lot in Cuba in the next years, but it's just, I think if you can build a sales force that's that diversified, it'll give you the opportunity to get business from those countries.
Very good.
I mean, just real quick, the GDP of China as compared to Latin America is about $1 trillion difference, and you're only dealing with half of the amount of people. So you have a large concentration of wealth, and you don't need to travel 22 hours when you can just travel maybe, you know, to the furthest place in South America is going to be an 8-hour flight. You know, and some of them are an hour flight. So it's really close. And a lot of people pay attention to it, and thanks to the customer that opened my eyes, it kind of helped us out, so I hope that helps you out as well.
I will challenge you on the flight length. I flew to Buenos Aires. It's a long flight. But anyway, and I didn't make it to Patagonia. So, Todd, why don't you give us, again, kind of, you've got two shipyards in San Diego, a shipyard in Cabo?
Cabo.
And why don't you share with us on this theme of kind of diversification and what happened for you in multiple markets, and how did your company grow?
Well, our company has grown steadily from 2005 to current. The real key to our growth was in the tough times or when yachting slowed down a little bit, we diversified. Our new construction in the commercial arena carried us through. We're building 2 to 3 boats a year consistently and have been since 2007.
Sorry, what kind of boats are you building?
We're building primarily commercial vessels for either government or pseudo-government agencies, for operators that are going to then charter them on long-term time charter to government agencies. Our boats range from 26-foot security or barrier handling tugboats that you'll see in naval stations, up to our double-hulled 180-foot tank barge that we build out of steel. And then in our primary boat we build is a 114-foot Meridian class supply vessel, which is not only been very successful in the commercial arena, is starting to make some inroads into the yacht arena as a smaller, I don't want to use the term shadow boat because that's not really what it's going to do, but I'll say mid-size expedition type boat that a yacht owner may keep around or for a different mission in the same arena. One of the keys to our growth in both our commercial and our yacht segments have not just been diversification, but development of infrastructure. And I think us as a community and us as a country to continue to market the United States as a global destination for yachting is we have to have the tools in the toolbox to be able to provide the services. In my area, in San Diego, that was relatively limited. We had, in 2004, we had a maximum lifting capacity in San Diego of 150 tons. We had 3 berths of 100 foot and greater, and that was it. Well, today we have a maximum lifting capacity of 660 tons. We have 50 berths that can handle 100 foot and greater, and we have multiple berths that can handle 100 meters and greater, and we have 2 berths that can cold iron a 100-meter yacht and larger by providing in excess of 4,000 amps of shore power. So what happens now is San Diego, which was a terrific stopover for a boat that was in the Pacific Range, has now put itself on the global map as somebody can provide these services. And hinging a little bit on what Frank was saying is that infrastructure is critical not only for the market to succeed, But for the owners to want to keep the boat in that region, you must have the tools and supplies to be able to do that. And the vendors have to come along with you, as do the subcontractors.
Yeah, okay. And then Ward, a little bit different. So we've got yacht sales, we've got data and publishing, we've got shipyards, shipyards that build and shipyards that service, both yachts and commercial ship, and Ward, and another boat builder. But Ward, you're kind of an interesting company because you are both a service provider and a sort of retail supplier of goods. And why don't you share with us as the company's evolved through the period of time we've talked about?
My perspective definitely will be from the service sector side. For our company, it includes engineering, onboard service, and in-house service, and sales of electrical equipment, wire and cable. Several trends and adjustments that I would like to touch upon that I think are important and apply to really all of us. With the economic debacle that started in 2008 and continued into 2009, we had to do something as a company because the yachting and recreational industry for us was falling back, and that is our roots since my dad started the company, was yachting and recreational. We did some military work if it fell into our laps, but we never really pursued it. We opened up a government contracts division and started seriously pursuing government contract work both on the service side, on the sales side also. We have done very well with that, but it was an eye-opener for me how much work is involved in getting that type of contract. We've done a lot of work for the Coast Guard. Serious learning curve. I think we're finally on the right side of that curve, but it took a lot of work. But it really helped us out tremendously in a very difficult time. The one thing I am seeing that's very encouraging within the yachting industry is a strong comeback of the refit business, at least in our area of southern Florida. We have a facility, our main facility is in Fort Lauderdale. We have another facility in Riviera Beach, which is just above West Palm Beach. But the refit part of the business is really coming back very strongly, and that dropped off in 2009 tremendously for us, and I think for everyone really, not just my company. But that has come back very strongly, but one thing we have noticed is these are fixed price contracts today. And when I say fixed price, I mean fixed price. It's a change for us because it wasn't quite structured that way in the past with the refits, but the change order side of things is handled in a very certain way. It's very important that that's done properly. And another thing that we are pursuing that I think is an interesting angle for us, we have good relationships with a lot of U.S. yacht builders and have for years and have done many different things for them. But we have never really done that type of thing with international builders. And I'll include the subcontractors that work for these international builders, especially I'm going to be speaking from the electrical side. We are pursuing partnerships and relationships with these builders and the subcontractors that do the electrical work to help them with their vessels when they're in the United States. Again, this is something that if it fell into our laps in the past, in the boom years, we would do it, but today we're really actively pursuing that, and I'm very encouraged about that part of the business.
All right. So just
Yeah,
to-
go ahead.
What Ward is saying about refit business doesn't surprise me an awful lot. I mean, people that have their own yachts are refitting their own yachts when it's their own boat, but the reality is that I think a lot of the time refits take place when there's a transaction, when a boat has been bought, a second-hand sale. A lot of refit work will go on the back of that. And if you think that in 2009, the first year after the crash or what have you, we only recorded 201 boat sales in 2009. Whereas this year, 2013, the last full year, 355. So I appreciate that that's not the whole market of refit. But if you imagine that those 355 boats, you know, the likelihood is that they'll have some form of refit work done
Right.
on transaction.
To
So
either
the
get
number of
sold or
transactions is
upon
nearly-
selling.
Absolutely
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely
very good.
right.
Very good. Well, the other thing we've kind of touched on, and there's a theme here of diversification being very important for the survival at first and now for the thriving. And I know Billy and I were on the phone just a couple weeks ago and hearing what's going on. How many contracts, Billy, are you with the government or no, with the oil company, right? Doing commercial boats?
Yes, our non-compete expired in 2010. We were able to get back into the military commercial. We're currently building 6
Yeah.
And a lot of that technology will be transferred into the yachts. These are LNG powered, diesel electric, Z-Pellers, VP2.
Yeah.
We're doing oil barges. We deliver a 300-foot, 30,000 barrel oil barge. We're now up to 121 days.
Great. Again, you know, we go from what happened in the global financial crisis to having to survive to now businesses doing well with that diversification. And kind of on that theme, but we, you know, and at the same time, yachting itself as a unique and distinct industry, again, in the United States is a $6 billion business. How do we do that better? Now, I want to take a look at some of the things that we've done well, and diversification is one of them. But what are some of the areas in your mind that things need to improve, that we can, as an industry, do better? And we'll start by, taking a look. What have we done what have we done well? What can we do better? Now, I think one of the places when we were on the phone talking together that was an interesting point was, Todd, you were saying with the fact that your growth came from, in 2006, was it the Chula Vista, and then you purchased another shipyard? And then, can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of Mexico and how your company grew?
Sure. Our growth really triggered with the installation of our 660-ton machine. We brought capacity to the market. We brought capacity to the U.S. market. At the time that we installed that machine, that was the largest machine in the United States. That's since been overthrown, which is good. I'm glad it's been overthrown. We needed it.
Sorry, when you say machine, travel lift?
Our travel lift, yeah.
Okay.
So our ability to service a market that was there in these larger boats. What we also, and part of that was expanding capacity beyond, American capacity beyond South Florida. South Florida has always been the mecca for yachting in the United States, and that's terrific, and they've done a wonderful job, but there's too many boats now. So we need to broaden that to different cruising grounds. The more adventurous owner, the sailing yacht owner, the boats have longer range, they're coming to the Pacific Ocean. And the Pacific Ocean's got a lot to offer. You can go to anchorages where nobody else is. You have a tremendous range of cruising grounds. The charter market's a little different because you don't have such a compact area. But what we've done well in San Diego, and I think we can continue to do well nationwide, is build capacity in the Northeast, build capacity even on the U.S. West Coast. There's still capacity in building in between, encouraging the Latin America countries to build capacity and keep that market more in our region. What could we do a little bit better? I think we need to position ourselves in the market and do a better job of communicating our skill sets and our capacities to the European owner, the European crew member, and the European management company. And it's not a barrier to do a refit in the United States. There's some real benefits. There's incredible economic stability. There's a terrific trades pool. There's all kinds of good benefits to doing the work. There's no VAT. There's a number of benefits, and if the yard's properly planned to bring the goods and the materials in, and even the specialists in from Europe, can be seamless if the yard period's planned properly.
Yeah, and the other point I meant to bring up was the fact that there was this event called the America's Cup out there. And you guys are in San Diego, that's San Francisco, it's 700, 8 or more, I don't know how many miles away. How did that affect life in San Diego in your industry?
The America's Cup's a sore subject for me. I was the guy who sat around when the America's Cup was being planned and said, I don't see any significant impact to this event in San Francisco on the mega yacht business on the West Coast. Wow, was I wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong, as a matter of fact, and I'm happy to say it. Our business alone, between our marinas and our boat yard, and all three of our yards, we have a directly attributed net increase of a $4 million gross sales as a result of the America's Cup in San Francisco. And I'm not even in San Francisco. So it was a tremendous impact for not just us, for our subcon, and I'm not even getting into the multipliers. So if we use South Florida's favorite multiplier, which I'm constantly preaching, by the way, the 7-to-1 multiplier that was audited, I use it all the time with government agencies. And if you take that into play, you look at what America's Cup did just in San Diego. We had a number of refits on projects that we weren't even bidding on, weren't even asked to bid on. These were boats that were going to do work either in New Zealand or we're going to do work in Europe before coming through. And they said, we're going to come for America's Cup. We're going to have this lull right after the race. Here's our work list. What can you do? We were literally receiving a work list a week before the boat wanted to haul out. And because we had the capacity and we had the manpower, we were able to accept those jobs. Now, it totally screwed up our new construction programs because we ended up having to pull all this labor from new construction to meet this yacht requirement, and we're licking our wounds from that now. But at the end of the day, we were able to perform, and that was what was absolutely critical. You know, some data, we looked at boats in our facilities alone, between all three facilities, we hauled 367 boats last year. Of those 367, 90 were over 100 feet. And we did that in 1 calendar year in 3 locations. So America's Cup had a massive impact.
Let me take a quick shift here and be the devil's advocate for a moment for everyone here, because one of the things you guys said, and it's really across the board, even though, Todd, you brought it up, and that is, you know, just from the starting blocks, when you compare the dollar to the euro, what's the price difference? How much does it cost to buy a euro? Costs about 1.35 today. Now, as yacht managers that do a bunch of refits and have boats traveling from Europe or wherever coming here, I would say on my company's behalf, on America's behalf, I was embarrassed because we had a classic sailing yacht come in. First of all, real deep draft, hard to find a place to haul out. But the haul out and the bottom paint job was more, considerably more, than people quoting in Europe. Why? Why, you know, when we start with a 1/3 advantage of the dollar to the euro, why aren't we more price competitive with Europe then?
That's pretty easy. If it's a deep draft sailing yacht and it requires a specialized handling, whether it be a graving dock or a dry dock, the European yards that have that hardware are all subsidized, heavily subsidized. There are very few, if any, shipyards, and Billy, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody's getting a U.S. subsidy anymore of any kind for a facility.
The only subsidies that have been available the last couple of years were the stimulus grants that they gave out.
The MARAD stimulus grant, yeah, and these were relatively small dollars. I'm talking, you go to Barcelona, heavily operating subsidies. Government provides operating subsidies for these facilities to run these graving docks.
Right.
So that's one reason. The rest of them, I really couldn't explain why. There's, you know, materials, paint's paint. I'm not sure how that
Right.
happened.
Right. Any other thoughts or comments from you guys? No? Yeah? Ward?
Southeast Florida, or the state of Florida, is fantastic and always has been as far as the service side of things is concerned. And again, this is my angle, and that's what I'll speak to. I know it is, in our area, in Southeast Florida, it has hurt us for many years as these boats have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Having that haul-out capability that you've been speaking about, Todd, hurt our industry. Now, things are being done today as we speak of improving that. But I think we've lost business to Europe just in that respect with the really large yachts, being able to, when they go through major work, they're going to have to come out of the water and have certain things done.
Right.
And I think that has hurt us. However, things are on the horizon, and I think that's going to be much better in the near future.
Okay. All right. Interesting point. Hey, don't mean to put you on the spot, but Dean, in the back, being an American-based company that provides a whole bunch of stuff, big advantage or not so big advantage with the euro and the dollar being favorable for export?
I would definitely say it's an advantage.
Okay. An advantage for you as a provider of stuff as opposed to a shipyard that has to compete maybe on a different level.
Without a doubt. I'm a full organ-based company, and about 60 to 70 is
Okay.
because of the
Okay. And Dean, National Marine. Dean, how many employees?
too many.
Just
130.
130. So large company for yachting. But in the United States, again, the dollar, the euro, it is an advantage in some cases, but in some cases, surprisingly not. Could someone tell us, because I don't have a watch on and I don't have my stuff, how much time do we have left? Not much? Okay, 0. We need to close. Okay, so we had a couple more slides that we won't get to. But the point was, and this is something brought up by, yes?
I have a question.
Okay, we'll come to them. If we, do you want to do it now? Or,
Sure.
go ahead.
My name is Teddy Garza. I'm a captain. I run a Baguero 110 based in Miami. My question is for you, Frank. Based on what you said about the Latin market, you said that 90% of your sales for the past 5, 6 years were to Latin clients, right? My question is, how many of those vessels were built in the U.S. and what was the size range?
I mean, unfortunately, primarily of those vessels were European built. And yeah, that's a very good point. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. There's a couple of things, and I'll make it real short because we're out of time. But as an industry, I think we got to do a better job. We are, as it stands right now, not viewed very well by the public. Maybe it's always been like this, but I think it's worse than ever. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done so the wealth comes back here and it stays here. And an American is not afraid of buying a mega yacht and keeping it in the U.S. We have some issues that we need to deal with. And, you know, that's another whole subject.
But a very, very good point, and kind of how we
very-
want to... Yeah, and then Ron, you had a thought?
Well, kind of along those lines, in talking about capacity and capabilities within this country, there's so much capable, so many capable shipyards. Capacity is there, the craftsmanship is there, the quality is there. I think as a market to the rest of the world, we need to promote that to the rest of the world. And we even need to promote it to owners within the United States. Many owners are going to Europe and buying large yachts. The capacity is right here. Quality is here. A lot of these people made their money in the United States. They should spend it in the United States at a qualified, capable shipyard, close to home, easy to visit.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and as we close, again, it was meant to be much more participatory. Sorry, didn't work out, but any other
Just one last-
points or questions?
Just one last point on the data, because you mentioned it. Also to remember, the US, in terms of new construction, the US is the 4th biggest manufacturer of boats above 78 feet. Italy is by far the biggest, but the US is 4th, and it has been 4th consistently for a couple of years. So that's not bad. You know, the Italy is way above, and then 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are very close. Actually.
So Italy, Germany, Netherlands?
Netherlands, Germany, and then the US.
US, okay.
And I think Turkey's just behind.
Okay, all right,
What's the
interesting.
nationality of the buyers? Have you broken that?
It's a tricky one because people are reluctant to give us that information a lot of the time, notably the brokerage houses. But we are data mining some of that, and so we do have some work carried out on that. But just as an interesting point, just for this, I got the number of boats that were sold by US brokers in 2013. So 355 boats sold last year, above 80 feet, let's say, and 147 of them were done by US-based brokers. Now, my experience suggests that most of those guys are selling to US customers. It's about 40% of the market.
Just strictly by observation of the boats that we did over 100 feet, I would say the vast majority are not American owners.
For you, but dealing with the Latin American market because
Nope,
of?
just
No.
in San Diego.
Okay.
I'm just
Internationally.
not scientifically, just by
Yeah.
recollection. I'm going
Okay.
to say less than 15% of those boats that we did are American owners.
Okay. John, you okay if I take a couple more? Okay. So the overall marketplace of sailing yacht is minuscule, but
It is.
again, historically in America, that was a very significant. My first job was a loftsman doing a Hinckley Sou'wester 59. So yeah,
But interestingly, so of the 355 second-hand boats that were sold last year, only 32 of them were sailing boats.
Yeah.
32.
Yeah.
It's literally around about 10%. But the thing is that I would have agreed with you. I would have said that, you know, when you were asking me 5 years ago, what did I think was going to happen? I thought the sailing market was going to do quite well, thank you. Because I thought a lot of those guys were just, these were enthusiasts. These were the guys that just loved the sea. They didn't, you know, they still had the bucks. They had the money. And so that would keep going. And actually the result was that the sailing market has been through a tough period as well. And brokerage sales in the second-hand market for brokerage sales for sailing boats has been very slow. 2013, there was a big jump to 32 units, but it's 32 units. It's very small.
As a
shipyard, we would love to build a sailing yacht. It's just, like Jeremy said, the numbers are so small.
Okay, we have to close, but just two closing thoughts. The slides we didn't get to were a overarching thought from a former boss and mentor of mine and just a great guy, Bob Saxon. And he wanted to have us look at the definition of a profession and the definition of an industry. And of course, everyone here in the room, I think, is a professional, which means you bring expertise. But the industry as a whole is still, we've been around a long, long time, but we're fragmented. We have some great, very, very dedicated people that have invested a huge amount of extra time to associations like this. But as a provocative way to sort of end in thinking, what can we do better? We can do better by working together. Yacht management companies, sharing stuff that becomes common knowledge instead of us holding it so tight. Everything in the shipyards that we are competitors and we have to survive, but at the same time, as an industry, I don't think we do nearly as good a job as we could sharing information, technology, and this is part of the reason why we're doing this, why John's dedicated this to be, why I was so interested in helping out, because we want us to grow as an industry and better together. So with that, we'll close. Thank you guys really very much. John, if you want to come back up and go on with whatever is next.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks to Michael and the panel. Yeah, give him a hand. Come on, give him a hand.